Welcome to Kevin Brady. He's our go to guy for the history of technology. And so we wanted to welcome you to the show. And as you know, Kevin, we're talking about a story that comes out of Cornell University.
Yeah.
And it's about an instructor. In fact, she's an instructor of the German language. And she kind of got frustrated here a few years ago in that students were using generative AI and online translation platforms to churn out grammatically perfect assignments.
Yeah.
And so her comment was, what's the point of me reading it if it's already correct anyway, and you didn't write it yourself?
Yeah.
And her question to your students are, could you produce it without your computer? So she came up with this idea that she has her exams and assignments with typewriters. And so I have to just say right up front, I've done my share of teaching. And when I look at people who go the extra mile to improve what they're doing, I first tip my hat to them. And
Absolutely.
then now it does bring up a lot of I shouldn't say issues, but it brings up some perspective around, what are we doing with our teaching? And so I thought I would try to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was a interesting response to the problem, to move everybody away from the new machines back to the old ones. So Mark Twain would have liked that. He invested in typewriters. But yeah, I can see what she's trying to do. I'm not sure that's the solution I would have chosen necessarily. Um, I think that what we want to see is uh, some sort of sense of progress as the students are moving through the material and over the course of the semester. And so I think there's a lot of different ways in which you can document that. A lot of people use various kinds of learning journals, or they might have a project that works itself out in stages over the course of the whole semester. But I see what she's getting at, trying to bring back some sort of a sense of accomplishment or craftsmanship to the learning, because it seems like I'm sure from the student's point of view, they're focused on the grade, they're focused on how do I get through this class, and so they're looking for what's the fastest and easiest way to get there in a lot of cases. And so anything that forces everybody to kind of like back up, maybe slow down a little bit, and think about this differently in terms of what the goals are, what are the objectives for the class. What by the time you get to the end of it, what do you expect? I love that from instructional design. What do you expect the students to be able to do
Yeah.
as a result? In her case, there, I think inadvertently she's created a typing class.
Exactly. I always thought my old typing teacher, Miss DeFrance, would be excited about that.
Oh yeah.
And I just think of other stories that relate to this. And we were chatting a little bit off camera here, and I remember slide rules. And when I
Yeah.
first went to college, I had one on my belt, and of course, the women just loved that. They would just flock around me and looking at that slide rule. But you know, we don't use slide rules anymore. And there's reasons for that. There was a new invention called a calculator, and we're using that. And I do know that you've had some experience in teaching writing, and you had some ideas about it being a process and maybe how AI might actually work with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was early on in my teaching career, the first class I ever taught for a community college. And I got introduced to a book by a fellow named Donald Murray entitled A Writer Teaches Writing. And he looks at it, he was a professional, and he said, well, for me, it's not just the outcome, the product, it's this whole process by which I discover my topic, discover what my take on that topic is, and then figure out what's the best way to present it to an audience. And so in teaching writing from that point of view, the final essay is not the objective. It's learning how to write. This sort of the everything from the brainstorming down to the final proofreading. And for those students who stuck with it, and the assignment included like 15 minutes of free writing every day. Had the students keep a journal, yeah. Because one of the things Murray also points out is writing's a physical activity. So, like any physical activity, practice makes a difference. The more you do it, the easier it gets to do. And I was in a department at a small school in Vermont where a couple of my colleagues had come out of the writing program at the University of New Hampshire, which is very much focused on this business of teaching writing as a process. And so then, with that, the students can't go to ChatGPT and get an instant essay and hand it to me because I want to see the brainstorming, I want to see the outline, I want to see the drafts as they go along. And what I'm looking for through all of that is the progress, the development of their thinking about the topic, you know.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I always did with them is I told students any essay can be revised up to the last day of the class and resubmitted. Like that, because in the reality, I've got friends who are professional writers. You know, it's constantly under revision until you hand it to the editor and the typesetter.
Yeah.
So and the notion being to encourage that mindset as they go forward. And get them away from being focused totally on the end product.
Yeah, and so AI, these large language models, right, could actually be part of that process, it seems to me,
Yeah.
and be able to help them in their writing. And then the writing tasks, the ideas they're trying to bring together and communicate, it seems like they could do more complex kinds of things and more in depth and could actually increase their writing skills. Am I putting words in your mouth with this?
Well, my question about it at this point has to do with this current crop of a so-called AI. I'm a
Yeah,
big AI skeptic. Okay, I remember Herbert Simon saying that what computers do is they simulate.
yeah.
This is a simulation, and I'm reading all these reports about the program inventing sources, for instance. Or just all of a sudden, in the midst of a coherent paragraph, there's two sentences that make no sense at all. That kind of stuff. And our mutual friend Bob Grassberger has used Chat GPT, and he says you got to go back and look at everything carefully because it makes stuff up. So, like, you
Yeah.
know, and of course, my friend always says, "Beware of machines that talk."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for being on the show.
Not at all.
Appreciate
Great.
it.
Yes,